Hey, all you amazing Met fans. Welcome to another episode of the Optimistic Met Fan Podcast. I'm your host, Frank Arsberger, and we got a lot to get to today. We have the first opening series in Houston. We have a series in Miami that we're in the middle of. We're going to talk a little bit about David Peterson's magnificent start last night and also the debut of Kodai Senga. We have opening day to talk about. That's coming up on Friday, April 4th. Against Toronto. Very excited to see Juan Soto's first home game of the season. And I'm actually going to talk about a little bit about Brandon Nemo's comments in a Newsday article that happened last week. I was a little late on that. I got that a little bit later from my friend. Texted me some really cool comments from Brandon Nemo, who's pretty been like soft spoken. So it's actually pretty cool that he stood up for the Mets and for Met fans, and we're going to get into that. So Clay Holmes made his debut on Thursday, and this was actually a mixed bag for me. I'm not going to say it was a bad start. I'm not going to say it was a good start. It was definitely kind of typical of a Met starter. Gave up 4 walks. The walks that haunted us last year are haunting us again. But honestly, I think for his stat line, if you look at it, it's kind of modest. He had 4 innings, 4 and 2/3 innings pitched. Did give up 5 hits. Only gave up 2 runs, which was really nice to see. He was able to pitch out of trouble. Ended up giving up 3 runs total. That's because Acuna had a throwing error in the game that ended up hurting Holmes' stat line. But all in all, I thought it was a pretty good start. He had 89 pitches total, 53 for strikes. He needs to get his off-speed pitches over the plate. He had a lot of trouble in game one getting those over the plate, and he looked a little bit like he was pressing a little bit on home plate. He didn't look comfortable like he did in spring training. But I still think that this transition to being a starter is going to work. I'm not going to give up on him yet. If you walk 4 guys, you're really hurting yourself, and you're really building up your pitching uh, numbers and as far as like your total number of pitches. So that's really not where you want to be. You're not going to go deep into the game if you're going to walk all those guys. And in spring training, he didn't really walk a lot of guys, so I'm kind of confident that he can get that under control. His next start coming up in Miami, and what else about that start? We had actually the bullpen in this whole series in Houston was actually fantastic, and that was a point of emphasis that I had in my first show, where I said that I thought the bullpen was going to be really good. I was pleasantly surprised with every single relief pitcher in that series. After Holmes went 4 and 2/3, you had Hiscar Brasband come in, and he really looked in control of the strike zone. He went 2 and 1/3 innings, had 2 strikeouts, 1 walk, and 1 hit. I thought this was really impressive. He had 22 strikes out of 34 pitches total. This is a guy who could give you multiple innings out of bullpen. I thought that this was really nice to see. And the Mets have a couple of guys that can do that. And they did that throughout this series. Oddly enough, Houston is a hitter's ballpark, and the total number of runs in the series was 11, 6 by the Houston Astros and 5 by the Mets, which was actually kind of typical of a Mets series, right? They don't do, the common thing. They always do something outside the box. But as far as Brazoban goes, his fastball looked really good. His off-speed pitches were on point, and I was really happy to see that. Danny Young came in last in the 8th inning, and he had 1 inning, and he did have 1K and 1 hit. It was an okay outing. It wasn't really that outstanding. It was kind of just average, but it was nice to see that he was able to get in there and keep the Mets in the game. The highlights of the game really weren't that much for the New York Mets. They did get a lot of guys on base. They did walk a lot. They just didn't hit a lot. Soto and Alonso both had 2 walks each and 1 hit each, so they did get on base a lot. The issue that I had with this game, and I think a lot of Met fans probably had with this game, We left a lot of runners on base, and that was an issue last year as well. And it was kind of surprising to see that because I thought with Soto and Alonso getting on base a lot, they would have capitalized on those uh, opportunities. But unfortunately, Nemo had a rough game at the plate. He left four runners in scoring position. If he gets a hit in this game, I think that changes the whole outcome of the game, especially in the ninth inning, which I'll get to. But Nemo in the first inning had a second and third opportunity, and he lazily flat out to left field. Really wasn't hit that hard. And I thought to myself, I said, if we get a hit here, it probably changes the outcome of Clay Holmes. He gets that 2-0 lead. Maybe that changes how he would pitch. But, unfortunately, it did not happen. Then in the eighth inning, he came up again with the bases loaded, Nemo, and he flied out to the center. That isn't bad. At least he put a good swing on the pitch. It was actually a good hit ball. It was just hit right at the center fielder. But again, you have bases loaded, and you have an opportunity to get back in the game. At this point, the Mets are down 3-0. If he gets a hit here, it's 3-2, and then you don't know what happens. Maybe the Soto at bat where Soto strikes out in the ninth inning. Maybe the game is a one-run game and not a two-run game when it was 3-1. But shoulda, woulda, coulda. You can't really talk like that in sports, and that's really where that game was. In the ninth inning, the backup catcher Hayden Sanger came up with bases loaded, and I thought, man, this is the injury to Francisco Alvarez is now in game one, not even later in the season. Actually, game one, you're feeling the effects of not having your starting catcher. I really would have felt more comfortable having Francisco up the plate instead of backup catcher. He came in the game because they did a pinch hit earlier in the game with Jesse Winker. He came in for Luis Torrens, so they had to go with Hayden Sanger. Because if you pinch hit for Hayden Sanger in the ninth inning, who do you go to if the game is tied in the ninth inning? You don't have any emergency catchers on the staff right now. So I was like, man, if Hayden Sanger, who I was rooting for him to get a hit with the bases loaded with no outs in the ninth, he ended up striking out. Hader struck him out, but I really was pulling for him. So were the broadcasters, Gary, Keith, and Ron, because this guy was working in Whole Foods a couple of months ago. Now he's put the game on the line to be a hero. I thought that really would have been a really cool story, but really cool story nonetheless. I mean, Hayden Sanger, 27-year-old guy, making it through the minor leagues, working at Whole Foods, and now he's backup catcher for the New York Mets. I think that's still pretty cool. Really cool to see him get his opportunity. Wish he would have got a hit, but sure he'll have his moments until Francisco Alvarez comes back. Other than that, the game was pretty rough. Soto came up with a 3-1 deficit, two runners on, and I know all Met fans were saying, okay, we could really stick it to Yankee fans if Soto gets a hit. And unfortunately, it didn't happen. Now, of course, Yankee fans were all over Twitter the next day. Oh, this is what you get for spending so much money. Listen, it's game one. Soto's going to be fine. We all know this. He's not always going to come up with the best approach to the plate. I mean, you want him to get a hit there, but he got fooled on a slider. That's going to happen. He even admitted after the game that, I was looking for a fastball. The guy came with a slider, made a great pitch. He actually gave credit to Hader, so, that was a classy act by Soto. But Soto's going to have his opportunities to be here. Obviously, after the game, Soto had some cool quotes. He expects to win the game on opening day. He said, I really thought, I was going to get a walk, but Hader kind of fooled me on that slider. He also brought up the point that he didn't mind getting a walk in that situation to get Pete up at the plate. I thought that showed a lot of, team first mentality. And, I'm pretty sure we're going to get that moment. We did get that moment in the Miami game last night, which I'll get to in a little while. But, the Soto effect did take effect in a couple of these games. He just gets on base at such a crazy pace. It's like such a pleasure to watch that guy play. It really is. Soto's just really his approach to just take pitches and know the situation is just really crazy. Watching every single at bat that he takes is like you don't want to get up out of your seat. It's really cool. But yeah, I mean, my take on this game one, would be the bullpen was solid, which was good. Holmes, if he doesn't walk a lot of batters, I think he'll just be just fine. Uh, I'm not expecting him to be an ace. I don't think anybody is, but I think he'll be a serviceable pitcher for this team. He just has to keep the walks down. I mean, that's really everybody's thing when you're a pitcher. You want to keep the walks down. You want to command the strike zone. He's gonna have his moments, Clay Holmes. I'm pretty confident of that. Game two was a little bit better. In the second inning, Mark Vientos and Jesse Winker got RBI hits, so they jumped on the Astros early, which was nice to see. Vientos had a double and got brought home on a single by Jesse Winker. And then Tyler McGill was pretty solid in this game. I thought he didn't look frazzled against a really good lineup. He had command of all his pitches. His stat line was 5 innings, 6 strikeouts, 3 hits, and a walk. He got into the sixth inning, and this is where I kind of felt bad for him. He had a 3-1 lead, and he was cruising in this game. And then there was a pass ball by Torrens on a strike three, first batter in the sixth inning. And I said, "Oh boy, here we go again. The Mets with their, unluckiness. Tyler McGill's gonna get, hit really hard now. Watch, because the top of the lineup was coming up, and then Mendoza went out, spoke to Tyler McGill. Tyler McGill, the next at bat, gives up a hit, gets taken out of the game. I feel bad for Tyler McGill because I really thought he would have went deeper in this game if not for that one play by Torrens. It was kind of a lazy backhand on a ball that was in the dirt. Got to get in front of that ball. That was the second time in this series that I said I wish we had Francisco Alvarez, much better defensive catcher. But 77 pitches. I know why Mendoza did what he did, taking him out of the game in the sixth inning like that with 2 men on, no outs. You don't want Tyler McGill to get frazzled and then implode. We've seen that many times with Tyler McGill. He goes 4 or 5 innings and then he, just falls off a cliff. And I think that Mendoza, learning that last year, is learning his players and, learning the moment of, okay, you know what, I know this guy. Let me get him out of the game. He had a really good start, game one. Let's take a week and get with Tyler McGill. I thought that was really good by Mendoza taking him out of the game. After he got taken out of the game, again, the bullpen was solid once again. You had Reed Garrett come in, had 2 strikeouts, looked amazing, ended the Astros' threat in the sixth inning, and then the Mets didn't look back. In the seventh inning, you had A.J. Minter come in for 1 inning, get 1K. He looked okay. He's still coming back from that hip surgery, so I think Mendoza just wanted to get him out there to get a feel for the game. He's probably going to be our eighth inning guy right now. I think you want to ease him in. I think that was a good call. And then earlier in the game too, forgot to mention this. Soto hit his first home run, and I think it's still flying somewhere in Houston. It was an up and in fastball, and he turned on it, and I didn't even see it leave the ballpark. That's how fast it left. So first home run by Juan Soto. He did miss in the top of the eighth. He had a pitch around the same area, and I thought it was out. He just barely missed his second home. So again, his approach at the plate, like I said, is just really, really cool to see. It's a pleasure to watch him play. In the eighth inning, Ryan Stanek came in, and he didn't get any strikeouts, but he looked really solid. His fastball was up at 99 already. That's awesome. I mean, if he could throw that hard, he's going to be just fine. Ryan Stanek came in and shut the door down in the eighth. Acuna made a nice diving stop on a play that saved the base hit from going to the outfield. I thought that was really nice to see Acuna getting some play at second base. And then Diaz came in the ninth, and it was a 1-2-3 ninth. Didn't throw a lot of pitches, got his first save of the season. He looked pretty solid. His velocity was up. It was down in spring training. Everybody was kind of worried about that. Mendoza even said, he goes, let's see how he does in the regular season because he knows how these guys prep is in spring training. And Diaz just looked on point. Um, the Met pitchers total in this game were really impressive. They had 10 strikeouts, and Tyler McGill got his first win. So that's good to see. And really, the pitching staff as a whole in this series was pretty solid. Griffin Canning pitched the third game, and this was the guy that everybody was kind of wondering about, kind of worried about. Uh, so was I. He actually pitched the best out of all the guys that started in this series. Had 5 2/3 innings, 4 strikeouts, 2 walks, only 4 hits. I felt really bad for him because I thought he just pitched against a guy that just had a better night. Spencer Arrighetti, second-year guy for Houston, went 6 innings and only gave up 1 hit. This is the game that really got me frustrated, only because the Mets got their only hit in the first inning. It was a double by Juan Soto, and then after that, Arrighetti just shut us down. But good outing by Canning. I mean, look, this guy, probably going to be our sixth starter. Maybe be pushed to the bullpen once guys come back from the IL. And I liked what I saw from Canning. He looked comfortable. He had control of the strike zone, and he really didn't walk a lot of guys. When he had 2 walks, that was really good. He did give up 1 home run, which was just, I mean, a really good hit by Pena, the shortstop on Houston. You can't ask for more than that from your fifth or sixth starter. I mean, it was just bad luck that he ran into a good pitcher that night. I mean, what are you going to do? Jose Siri, the center fielder on the New York Mets, did get the only run of the game. And this is a pretty cool play. So he was on third base after stealing second and advancing on a sac fly to third. And Soto was up at the plate, hit a ground ball back to the pitcher. And the pitcher looked him back to third base and then kind of lazily turned around and threw to first, saying, oh, he's not going to take off. Siri showed off his speed. It was like seeing Sonic the Hedgehog on third base. I mean, this guy just took off like a bat out of hell and made a great play. And you see what he could bring to the table. He's not going to bring a lot of offense, but if he can get on base, speed sometimes kills, and you saw that on this play. And I thought that was really an exciting play to see. Other than that, I mean, this series was really disappointing only because of the hitting. The one thing that we worried about as Met fans coming into the season was, what are we going to do with the pitching? Because, Sean Manaea and Frankie Montas were on the IL in spring training. But the back end of this rotation really did really well. I thought that Tyler McGill showed maybe he's turning a corner. I mean, I say that with a grain of salt because you never know, but I know it's only one start, but it was really encouraging to see him go into the sixth with only 77 pitches. I thought that was really, really good. Can't ask for more than that from him. And Canning, I was pleasantly surprised. I think most Met fans were. So we'll see. I mean, I want to see these guys do this a couple of more times before I get fully confident. But, all in all, I thought it was a really good series for the pitching staff. The bullpen was the highlight of the series. Their total numbers for the series were 9 innings, 9 2/3 innings with 9 strikeouts and no runs scored. They really held this Houston lineup in check. And that was a point of emphasis, I think, that a lot of people had going into this series was, what is the bullpen going to look like? Because obviously, short sample sizes, you don't really know. You had Max Kranick, you had all these question marks with Brazaban, and, you really didn't know what was going to happen. But, only a first series. But overall, I thought it was really good for the pitching staff to get off to that start. I think that Jeremy Hefner is a very underrated pitching coach, and I think this showed that the Mets pitching lab could get the best out of a lot of different guys. And, it was really nice to see his plan fall into place. Uh, can't wait to see what happens when a couple other guys come back. We have Nunez getting ramped up in the minor leagues, so we'll see how that all unfolds. And then we had David Peterson make his debut last night. I wanted to get on last night but I'm just getting back from a cold, so figured I'd do the podcast tonight. I wanted to get on before the Miami series to kind of talk about David Peterson and what I expected from him this year. This is a guy that the Met fans have been waiting for to emerge as a top frontline starter. David Peterson. He was a former first round pick and is only starting to blossom now. He had hip surgery last season and he came back, and in 121 innings, he had an ERA of 2.9. Okay, if you have a sub 3 ERA in the major leagues, you're pretty darn good. And I think he was really underrated last year for the New York Mets in their run going to the National League Championship. I'm expecting big things from him this year, and I was extremely impressed with his start last night. He went 6 innings, gave up 5 hits, 2 earned runs. There were 2 solo home runs that he gave up. He gave up one in the first inning, and then you kind of saw his body language. He looked really upset after that home run, and then he was just lights out. 9 strikeouts, which was really awesome. 3 walks. I wasn't happy with the walks, but he did have 2 walks early in the game. So considering that, 2 of those walks came in the beginning of the game, I'm okay with 3 walks as long as he's getting all those strikeouts and keeping guys off base and keeping them off balance. Which, I know it's Miami, so I'm holding my breath on that. I am going to see him pitch Sunday at Citi Field. Really happy to see him pitch against Toronto. They have a very good offense, so I'm hoping he could carry this start in Miami to Toronto, to Citi Field against Toronto. If he could give a good start in Toronto, I think he can prove to a lot of people that this year and last year wasn't a mirage. That David Peterson is going to be here to stay. And I actually think I had a bold prediction, and I have a few uh, in this episode and probably next that I'm looking into. Uh, I didn't want to give too many bold predictions because I know it's still early in the season, but I really feel like David Peterson is going to be the best pitcher on the Mets this year. And my prediction for David Peterson was to make it to the All-Star game. Now, I know that's a high order because I know there's a lot of great pitchers in the National League. That's why it's a bold prediction because honestly, it probably won't happen. But I think if he does what he did last night, I think you could make the argument that, maybe he could make the All-Star team as one of the alternate starting pitchers. I can't really see that not being a possibility. But we'll see. It's early on. Brazaban did come in this game to relieve David Peterson. Again, went 2 innings, had 2 Ks. Brazaban looks really good early on this season. I was really happy with Brazaban. I don't know what's going to happen to him when other guys come back, like Nunez and Paul Blackburn. But look, I mean, if he pitches this good, he's going to make it hard on David Stearns and, you know, Carlos Mendoza to make a decision. I mean, this is really the time of the year where guys are going to have to play well to stay up on this major league roster. And look, even if some guys get brought down in this bullpen, doesn't mean they're going to not come back up. We saw that a lot last year, and I think we'll see that again this year. It, takes a lot of guys to get through 162 games. So I'm not really going to be that upset if Brazaban gets sent down. I will be upset if Max Kranick gets sent down because this guy looks really good, and I think we got a steal when we picked this guy up, when we picked him up last year. Max Kranick um, looks to be one of those guys that you could throw in with guys on base, and he'll be kind of like that emergency, let me throw, you know, water on the fire and stop the bleeding type of pitcher. You'll see him come into the game with maybe men on base. I hope that he doesn't do that Carlos Mendoza too many times because he did it in the Houston series to Max Kranick. And I was like, this is the guy's first appearance in 2 years, and you're throwing him in with the bases loaded. But Max Kranick looked good too. So we'll see where the Mets go with the bullpen. Again, I really feel like this was one of the topics that I really wanted to hit on today, the bullpen, because the bullpen really deserves it. I think that the bullpen is going to be the strong point for the Mets pitching staff. We'll see where that goes. But all in all, I mean, They pitched 12 innings and only gave up 2 runs in 4 games. That's pretty good. Danny Young was the guy who gave up 2 runs last night in a blowout victory against the Marlins. Um, I was disappointed with that. I wanted him to go a full inning with no runs. We would have broken the scoreless uh, record for the Mets to start the season. That was 12 and 2/3. We tied it, but then Danny Young gave up a couple of runs with 2 outs. So unfortunately, we didn't get that. But you know what? Listen, all in all, it's good. I mean, I'm not going to hate on him. Danny Young has been pitching pretty well since he's been on the team so far, so I'm not really going to hate on him. Where do I want to go? Nemo's quotes. Now, this was pretty interesting because on my last podcast, I mentioned that the Mets and the Met fans didn't want to be the little brother of the Yankees anymore, or at least we didn't think that we were. Pretty interesting quotes that I got in a text from my friend. Shout out to my buddy Carlos for giving me that text. It had a couple of pretty interesting quotes from Brandon Nemo. I'm going to read them off to you right now. The first one, when asked about how he feels about playing in New York, he says, "We're not going to try to be the stepbrother to the New York Yankees." That's a pretty bold statement because anytime Met fans get into these little debates with Yankee fans, we always hear, "Oh, you're the little brother team." Well, not according to Brandon Nemo. Brandon Nemo feels like the Mets aren't the little brother team anymore, and he's kind of getting sick and tired of hearing it. It's really nice to see Brandon Nemo talk like this. Usually he's a soft-spoken guy, so coming from him, these type of comments speak volumes, I think. Then the second quote from the article from Newsday from Brandon Nemo: "We're not going to be the second team in New York anymore." Wow. I mean, if that doesn't scream, uh, you know, toughness, I don't know what does. And then the last one, "We want to be New York's team. We want to command respect for the Mets name." Now, this last one I really like because this is a guy who's been on the Mets for the last 10 years now. Came up in the system in 2015. Wasn't part of the World Series team in 2015. He was in the minors, but came up in 2016, and he's been with the team ever since. And for him to say that, he bleeds orange and blue, Brandon Nemo. He's a New York Met. He's one of us. I remember uh, watching the series against the Philadelphia Phillies, and after Game 4, there was a really cool highlight. You can catch it online on either SNY app, or you can catch it really on anything, YouTube, whatever. It was a really cool clip where after we beat the Phillies to get to the National League Championship, you have this moment of clarity with Brandon Nemo, who had teary eyes and tears rolling down his face a little bit because of all the hard work that he put in during the year and his time as a New York Met. I remember him saying that, this really meant a lot to him because of what he had to go through with the New York Mets and all the years that he put in to fight for a moment like that. And you kind of felt it as a fan too, that this guy really bleeds orange and blue. This isn't just a guy playing baseball as a job. This means something to him, and it's really nice to see that from a lot of the Met players, especially a guy like him. Uh, a quick shout out to, speaking of another guy who is a pleasure to watch play and who wears his emotions on his sleeve. Francisco Lindor became a dad for the third time yesterday. Had his baby boy Koa, and congratulations to the Lindor family. That's really cool. He wasn't in the game yesterday, but he ended up coming back to the stadium and was sitting in the dugout with his uniform on. I mean, if that doesn't speak captain to you, then I don't know what does. Francisco Lindor literally had a kid 24 hours before the Met game, or maybe even earlier that day. And then he's sitting in the dugout with his teammates. I mean, that's just you can't make that up. That's who Francisco Lindor is. He's leading off tonight in the second game of that series, and I just think that's what makes Francisco Lindor uh, the captain of this team, the unofficial captain, as it may be. But honestly, at this point, I don't even think we need him to be named captain. I think we all know that that's who he is, and I'm cool with that. Uh, you know, seeing him in the dugout doing what he does uh, day in and day out. I think that Francisco Lindor showed that last night. Um, I still think that's crazy that he had his baby boy, and then the same day he's sitting in the dugout going over stuff with Jesse Winker, and a bunch of the guys. I thought that was really cool to see that. Um, I do have an injury report for the New York Mets that I was looking at. Bad news on Sean Manaea. This really bummed me out to see this. He got a PRP injection, which is a platelet-rich plasma injection in his for his oblique. He's not going to be able to throw for the next 2 weeks, which means now he's going to be backed up in his debut. They're saying probably late May. That's not good news. I was really hoping to see Sean Manaea late April, early May. So I hope that he has a speedy recovery and he could work through that. Maybe his body responds differently than other people, and he'll be back sooner. But uh, Carlos Mendoza wasn't really optimistic about that. He's saying, you know what, we got to get him back up to speed and get him pitching again. Not throwing for 2 weeks, that means he's not going to throw until middle of April. So that's kind of a bummer. But had some good news with Jeff McNeil and Paul Blackburn. Paul Blackburn, the other pitcher on the IL, he could be back as early as next week. Uh, Carlos Mendoza was mentioning that he wanted to speak to his pitching coaches and his staff, see where Paul Blackburn was. I think they need to get him up to speed with his pitch count. Once they get that in order, I don't know if they'll put him on a short rehab assignment or if they'll just bring him up to the major league team. And, we'll see with Paul Blackburn. I don't really know if the Mets even need him right now because the bullpen's been so good. But, you can never use too much pitching, as they say. And as Met fans know, we had a lot of guys coming in and out of the roster last year with the pitching staff. So hopefully Paul Blackburn can come back and see what he can do. But no rush because, the Mets bullpen looks pretty solid right now. On the other front with the IL, we have Jeff McNeil. He's swinging a bat, taking light batting practice. That's really good. We're hoping to get him back soon. Um, but again, with these obliques, Carlos Mendoza really wasn't sure when Jeff McNeil would be back, and I think that's kind of a smart assessment by Carlos Mendoza. You don't want to give false information with guys' rehab assignments and where they're at. You know, guys' bodies respond differently. Obliques can be a yearly injury. Uh, we just got bad news with Sean Manaea, so anything can happen. I'm hoping to get Jeff McNeil back, but right now, Brett Beatty and Acuna are doing a pretty decent job of doing the second base. Both of those guys give you a little bit different kind of aspects to it. Beatty's more the offensive option, but he hasn't really played a bad second base defensively. Acuna gives you the speed difference, and that was something that was on display a couple of times when he started. You can see going first to home on a double last night by Jose Siri. That's the stuff that Acuna can bring. So it's kind of tough, to diagnose who would be sent down once McNeil comes back. But right now, there's no rush to bring McNeil back. These guys are doing fine. I kind of like the young guys getting an opportunity. I don't know about you guys, but I always feel like the young guys are a little bit more hungry and want to win. Not saying that Jeff McNeil doesn't. That's just always been my opinion on young players. I always think that a young guy is more hungry than a veteran because he's trying to make a team, trying to make a point, trying to, get his feet in. You know, that that's something that you can't teach with the young players. But we'll see what happens with Brett Beatty and Acuna once Jeff McNeil comes back. Something has to give. I'm rooting for Beatty personally, but we'll see. Um, what else? Opening day. So opening day against Toronto. I'm gonna be at the game on Sunday. So if anybody wants to hit me up on the Instagram or TikTok of the show, I'd welcome that. Maybe we could have a meet and greet. I don't really know. I mean, it's kind of early in all of this, but we'll see. As far as tonight's game goes, with Kodai Senga making his debut, before I end the podcast, uh, really, I don't really know what to say about Kodai Senga. I mean, he was injured all the last season. He looked okay in spring training, but now he's going to be pitching in a real game. So we'll see. What I'd like to really see, I think most Met fans, just get out of the game healthy. I think that's the most important thing because we're going to need him. Also, I'd like him to go at least 5, 6 innings. As good as the bullpen has been, I don't want them to get burned out. So, I think the offense should have its moments tonight. They're going to have a tough matchup against Sandy Alcantara, but we'll see. I really think that this team is as advertised. They're going to be really good. I think their offense had a good night last night. I'd like to see them to repeat that tonight, and we'll see. I mean, this is early on in the season. I'm not really expecting fireworks just yet, but as far as the season goes, we're 2 games better than we were last year, right? We were 0-4 when we started. We're now 2-2. Let's try to get a win tonight and go for the sweep tomorrow. And then let's go Mets for opening day on Friday. All right. Like always, hit us up on the email for any questions or any topics you guys want to talk about on optimisticmetfan@gmail.com. You could also follow us on TikTok and Instagram. And of course, you could watch us on YouTube and Spotify. That's going to be it, I think, for today's show. Thanks, everybody, for listening and for joining in. And like always, be amazing.